Hi, I'm Lisa Zabaniak from Life Like You Mean It. And today we're going to be talking about how you could tell that you are having a spiritual awakening. Now, this video is in three parts, which is really the three main signs that you are having a spiritual awakening. Part one is intuition. Part two, we are going to look at your emotions. And part three, we're going to look at your change in perspective. Let's get started. So, before we go on with our signs that we are having a spiritual awakening, I'd just like to bring your attention to two videos that I have made before that might be really important for you now. So, if you haven't watched those videos, please go and check out the first one, which is the stages of a spiritual awakening, because everything I'm going to be talking about now is in a certain stage, and you might not be in that stage. So, you might not be resonating with this yet. So if that's the case, then head on over here to check out the stages of a spiritual awakening. The other video I would like you to check out, which you can also click here, is the hardest part of a spiritual awakening, which goes into much more depth about the dark night of the ego, one of the most difficult parts to the spiritual awakening. So that would be really worthwhile for you to check out. So, part one of our video, we're going to talk about your intuition. So, this is where you know that you are in a spiritual awakening because you start to become much more intuitive. Now, if you've not been in touch with your intuition up to this point, you can start to see the connection with this and start to see it growing. So you can start to get these gut feelings or things like you're thinking about somebody and then they call or they text you or something pops up on Facebook about them or something along those lines. You might be having more active dreams, right? Dreams that are very vivid, that you kind of wake up and you remember your dream when you didn't usually do that before. Or you get a sense when you are around people where even though they've got this big smile on their face and everybody else seems to be loving them, you are sitting going, there's something off. I think they're putting on a mask for everybody else to see. It's nothing that they're saying, nothing that they're doing, but I can feel their energy is not in alignment with what they are trying to project out to others, for example. Side note, if you are loving this video as much as I know you are, I've got another series here on YouTube that is all about working with the moon. And what we do in that series is we look at each of our chakras individually and we look at the shadow work that we can be doing to help to get clear on what we're ready to release for that particular chakra. And then working with the full moon, we go ahead and release that. And then that allows us to create the space necessary to bring in something else that serves our highest good to replace that, which we will then work with the new moon in order to do that. So this is the perfect complement to this series that you're watching now in doing our dark night of the ego type of shadow work for our own spiritual awakening. So if that interests you, you can go ahead and click on our card here and go and start watching that series. Bless. Part two is your emotions. A lot of people report back that as they're going through a spiritual awakening, they become very emotional. So, this can go on either end of the spectrum, and it can literally shift as you go through the awakening. Because, as I mentioned before, we have different stages to our spiritual awakening. So, we are not going through the same thing all the time. And each stage is going to last for a different length of time, depending on the work that you are doing in that stage. So we can have a period of time where we feel really quite down and low, and then we can feel really absolutely blissful, depending on where you are at in your spiritual awakening. We can also find that we are very sensitive to other people's energy. So, this is the emotional part where we might actually be able to realize that this isn't ours, but that when we are interacting with other people, even just on social media, even just seeing other people's posts, watching, commercials on television, they don't have to be people that are right in front of us where we can palpably feel their energy. but yet they're still able to connect, right? And we connect with them and feel that emotion. And if we're not aware of it, it can change our emotion and we could be all over the place. When we are aware that this is what's happening, we still feel that that shift is happening, but we can detach from it and say, this isn't my shift, right? I'm feeling that attachment to others. And when you are feeling like you are really attached to others and you are picking up all of that emotional stuff, it makes you want to isolate away from other people. So the emotion goes hand in hand with this desire to not be around other people. It's partly a kind of safety mechanism to try to prevent you from having to experience all of that, right? And it's also part wanting to go within so that you can figure this out and you can create balance within yourself so that you are able to be around other people, pick up on the emotions that they or the energy balances or imbalances that they have going on and not be impacted from them directly. And the third sign that you are having a spiritual awakening is a change in your perspective. Now, this is huge, and obviously, it will mean different things for different people. But I'll give you an example here. In my latest spiritual awakening, the perspective shift that I had is realizing that everything that I have built in my life, even my business and the desire to help other people, and having this big beautiful house that I've got and the cars and the holidays and the all of these things that I've strived for, I realized in this latest spiritual awakening were driven by ego. And what I mean by that is they were driven by the wounded aspect of my ego that I had not yet healed. And because I hadn't healed it, I wasn't aware that it was running my show. And the healing that needed to happen was for me realizing I am worthy. I do not need external validation about my worth to feel worthy. And that's what the house and the cars and the holidays and even the business, to an extent, wanting to help other people, wanting to have this kind of notoriety with it, was all based on me getting external validation about my worth. And when I realized that, I took a nice deep look, as you do, at your life. And of course, there were some things that I wanted to remain, like helping other people. My business is everything to me. I am so proud of what I've built, but I need to shift my perspective and be aware as I'm making decisions within my business and understand what is driving me to make that decision. Do I want to be on that magazine cover because it actually will allow me to help other people? Or do I want to be on that magazine cover because it's going to give me notoriety and it's going to cause other people to say how amazing I am? And that's going to give me, validation about my worth. If it's the latter, then I need to reevaluate whether or not being on that magazine cover is really something that I want to go for. Do I really need that? Because that validation coming externally is never going to work. It has to come from internal, right? It has to come from within. If it's the former and I'm really doing it for, nothing to do with a wounded ego or a wounded inner child or, anything like that, then absolutely that is my way of being able to reach other people and being able to help more and step into my purpose. So it's caused me to have a shift in perspective within my business, but also my life, right? And starting to shift to look at other things within my personal life that may bleed over into my professional life that I never even knew were things that I wanted. But they are things that I am shifting perspective on because I'm realizing the things I've built for myself are no longer things that I need. That validation for me does not come from having the house and the cars and the holidays and that whatnot. The holidays allow me to have special time with my family. That's important, not the validation that, oh, look at how much I make or look at what I can do that I can go on these holidays. That's no longer important because I've healed that inner child. I've healed the wounded ego aspect of myself through the shadow work, through the dark night of the ego stage that we go through, which again, click on this card if you haven't watched that video about that specifically, the hardest part of the spiritual awakening. By going through that work, I have realized that I have healed so much more than I had ever given myself credit for, and that I don't need these things that I have built in my life. And so now I'm seeking other things. And of course, if you're in a relationship, that affects the other person. I'm very, very grateful and blessed that I have a partner that is on the same page as me and at least willing to entertain some of my thoughts that I get, some of my urges and desires that I end up creating for myself. And I'm very fortunate that way. But for some people, they're not. And so it causes them to even question, right, and shift their perspective on their relationships, on the people that they have in their circle, because they start to feel like they might actually not be on the same page anymore, that those people may not be helping them facilitate their growth, but might actually be hindering them. And so they have a change in perspective, not just on their career or their personal life, but the people who occupy their space, people that they share energy with. And that is huge. I hope this video helped. I love serving you in this way. If you have not subscribed already, please go ahead and do so so you never miss another video.